Hello, hello, Alisa Meredith here, and today we are supposed to be talking about brand search. So how to optimize your brand for Google search, SERPs for beginners, if you will. If you don't know what a SERP is, I had to Google it myself. It's a search engine results page, and we all want to not only be there at the top, but we want it to show exactly what we want it to show. So that is what our topic is today. And hello, Brian I know you're in Barcelona. And thanks for sending that video. It was great to actually see it. And Carrie Rouse is in wintry Ontario. Oh, I bet it is wintry. I will tell you, it's in the 60s here today. And about midnight, we're supposed to start getting ice. We are not prepared for ice. So it should be a very interesting time. I think our guest is having some issues getting on, but we have a little bit of entertainment from Sunny, who always knows when it's time to come on. So because I do not really know enough about Google SERPs to tell you all the stuff I was going to ask, I was thinking we might do something a little bit different. Oh, I know. And yes, there's Sunny. There he is. And ice is never good. It is not kind of expecting to lose power, but hopefully it'll be gone pretty soon. Yeah, so I thought what we might do is go through some Pinterest stuff. So I don't know if you have been on the community on Pinterest. I've been kind of super active there today for some reasons. But this is a really great place. And I'm sorry to change the subject on you from SERPs to Pinterest, but got to talk about what you know, right? So hopefully Jason will be able to get on shortly. Something I found yesterday, I was super excited. Let me see if I can share it with you. Share my screen. Sharing is easiest with two monitors. Yes, I'm sure it is. Let's see, I think it's, nope. I'll find it. I will find it. Okay, here it is. Here it is. You remember how we always used to talk about Pinterest guided search? Well, it went away and we were very sad. But just when I was going to chime in to answer a question in the community about where did that guided search go, I thought, well, someone posted they saw something kind of similar to it. So I thought I'll try it. Look at, it's here, it's back. So I would love to hear if you have this either in mobile or desktop. I actually don't know if I have it on mobile. But yeah, so why this is so exciting, why we nerd out about this stuff, is for Pinterest SEO. So what this is telling us is these are the things people are searching for when they're looking for cold remedies. Probably can't tell, but there's a reason I'm looking this up. Feeling a little bit under the weather. But anyway, cold remedies, fast cold remedies, tea for cold remedies, chest cold remedies. So let me know if you have this on your account. I would love to see it. Oh, and thank you for your support, Brian. A little Pinterest bonus. It's a little bit fun. All right. So let's talk about this. What are we seeing here? We're seeing shop. So we can shop for cold remedies. Is that going to show up? Yeah, look at that. Oh, cold sore remedies. But also some cold remedies. Let's go back. Profiles. Are there really any profiles about cold remedies? What do we think? Yes? No? Maybe so? Let's see. There sure are. Okay, so maybe, I don't know if we talked about this on the show or not, but Pinterest put out an announcement that you don't have to use keywords in your username anymore. They can figure out what you're sharing. So make sure, try to be consistent when you can. I want to check this one here because it's blue. And I'm wondering, in the past, we kind of thought that these little bubbles up here, and they all have different colors, that the color kind of corresponded to the overall color of the results. Yes, all the bubbles and keywords are back. Yes, Maria. At least for me, I would love it if you would try it and let me know what you see. Hi, Mark. And we have a Jason. No guided search for him. Okay, so let me try to not break anything. We are going to do SERPs, but I'm so glad we got to see that little treat, because if it's back for me, it might be back for you soon. Hi, Dara. Nice to see you. Let me get rid of this screen share and bring up our friend, Jason.
Hi, Alisa. Terribly sorry.
That's okay. I'm glad you're here. We defaulted back to Pinterest, but I'm really happy to have you here to talk about SERPs.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the whole kind of filter pills, I call them filter pills, and the idea that you can filter results by vertical and by topic is incredibly powerful, and it's coming to all of these platforms, and it's part of the brand SERP world as well. Yeah. So I was actually watching with great interest.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And Maria is very happy. Yes, Pinterest listened to us. I know we used to use this all the time to figure out what keywords we should use in our own pins. So yay, it's back. But I'm glad you are here. I want to introduce you. Jason Barnard is the brand SERP guy. He's a digital marketer who specializes in brand SERP optimization and knowledge panel management, which is a mouthful. We're going to talk about what those things are. I'm very excited for this topic, as I always am, but here's one that I know very little about. So it's a great opportunity for me and for you to ask all of your little questions. Jason is the CEO and founder of Kalicube. He's also a musician. I don't know if he'll be singing or playing for us today, make no guarantees, but he could. And he just released a book called The Fundamentals of Brand Search for Business, which I grabbed. You can get it on Kindle right now. It was very affordable. It was like $2.99. And I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but so far it's quite interesting. So did I leave anything out?
No, you didn't, actually. I can sing any song you want. Okay. So I could actually sing the entire conversation, but I won't, because it'll get really annoying.
Okay, well, put your requests in the chat, everybody. Oh, cool. Mark has his guided search. Brian's not getting his, but that could be because of location, maybe. Maybe they're rolling it out to different locations. That happens a lot. Okay, so let's talk about this. What in the world is a SERP?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, because Alisa, you've been on my show and we were talking about Pinterest, and I knew nothing about Pinterest. So it's my turn now to turn the tables and say, right, okay, what is a SERP? I'm going to talk about Google and Bing. A SERP is a search engine results page, and a vast number of us use Google and Bing to search for what we need, what we want on a daily basis. And my speciality within the search engine results space is what appears when somebody Googles your exact brand name or personal name. And for me, it's something that is totally underestimated, incredibly, accessible for everybody, and really, really powerful.
Okay. So feel free to bring up your browser and type in your brand name or your personal name, see what comes up. We'll talk about what that means. I know when you had me on the show, not only did you sing a song for me, but you also looked up my SERPs, and surprisingly, it was pretty good. So I don't know if it still is. I looked, but I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what's good. So we're going to kind of walk through that as well. Remember, add your questions. Love to hear what you're thinking. But why then? You said it's underestimated and it's accessible, but why is this topic so interesting to you that you are the brand SERP guy and have been for years? Like, this must be you must be very interested in this.
Right. But it's a great kind of like approach to this whole thing. Is I started doing this 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago. And I thought, right, I'm going to sort this out. I'm a really good SEO. I know how Google functions. So it'll take me a couple of months and I'll sort it out and I can get on with my life and become a wonderful SEO like everybody else. But 8 years later, every time I look at this, I see something I hadn't seen before. It's the deepest rabbit hole you could possibly imagine. Really? For something that seems so simple. Sorry, excuse me.
I was just going to say, we know rabbit holes around here, so we can we can relate to that.
Right. Well, I started diving down this one 8 years ago, and every time
Yeah.
I talk to people, be it a brand manager, an SEO, a business owner, they say, yeah, simple. Search my brand name, I come up number one. Search my personal name, I come up number one or number two, whatever it might be. And as soon as you dig down into it and start looking at what it all means, how much can you control that message when somebody Googles your brand name or your personal name, you end up in a situation where you think, well, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And for a brand, it's, I have spent a lot of money building my brand message. Why isn't Google representing my brand message in the way that I want to my audience who are searching my brand name? And the answer is there is no good reason except Google doesn't understand what you want to project to that audience. And as a person, why isn't Google showing my audience my life story, my strengths, why they would want to connect with me? It's your Google business card. Everybody Googles a brand or a person before they start doing business. And, you know, with the last couple of years, we've been doing Zoom meets an awful lot. And you can see people Googling under the table. They're looking up who you are.
Okay. Well, speaking of who you are, happy to have so many great friends here today. We have Holly from Halifax. We had an Ontario. Yeah, we're from all over. And where are you, Jason?
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm in Paris, in France, as opposed to Paris, Texas. And
yes.
yeah, so the Paris where there are croissants in the morning and baguette and coffee. And it's lovely. So yeah, I'm coming from across the pond. Do you call it?
Yes, we do. and Phoebe is here. Hey, Phoebe in New York State. It wouldn't be the same without you guys. And here's our Ontario friend, Carrie. Google business card, insightful. Yes. So you said this thing, but you just kept going, and I need to go back to it because you said,
oh, sorry.
No. I mean, this is obvious for you. It's just not for me. People are going to Google you before they do business with you. And to me, that is the number one reason why this matters so much, right? Because if they Google you and they see nothing, do you even exist? I feel like that should be a bumper sticker or something.
100%. I mean, Google, sorry, you are what Google says you are at the point at which somebody Googles your name or your brand name. And I think we like to diss Google a little bit and say how rubbish it is, but we use it.
Of course we do.
90% of the world use Google. And why do we use Google? Because we trust it. Because we trust it to give us the right results. That's why it dominates. And so by extension, when your audience Googles your name or your brand name, what they see is something they believe in. And it's so incredibly important that that business card makes sense, explains who you are, what you do, and who your audience might be.
Interesting. Okay. So if you want to see the poster child example of what you should see when you Google your name or you Google your business, you can do this right now. I won't be offended. Go to Google and Google Jason Barnard, Barnard, and see what comes up. This is ideally what we would all like to see. Is there anything about your SERPs that you would like to change, or is this indeed perfect because it looks perfect?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I don't think I've ever been called a poster child before. So I'm incredibly charmed and delighted.
Poster child, yes.
It makes me feel young and desired, which is lovely.
Excellent.
Yeah, on my brand SERP, I actually spend an awful lot of time, probably too much, trying to craft it. And the idea isn't that I'm self-obsessed, lovely cat. It's that I want to see to what extent I can actually, I was going to say manipulate, but it's influence Google, convince Google, educate Google, let's say, to tell my audience what I want them to hear or to see about me. And if you look at my brand SERP, you will see there are videos, there are Twitter boxes, there's my site. The description in the knowledge panel on the right-hand side comes from my own site. So I'm giving my own brand message. and it's got some songs. Now, I don't control all of that information, but I certainly have much more influence over it than anybody else, or anybody else who hasn't worked quite so much as I have on it. So when you look at it, it says, if you read it from top to bottom, who I am, what I do, and why you might be interested in me, why I am authoritative and expertise, or rather which domains I'm authoritative and expert in, and that's digital marketing, brand SERPs, knowledge panels. So it really is a nice trick to be able to play to get Google. Sorry.
No, this is just fascinating. There's audio. It tells us when you were born.
Yeah.
Your partner, your parents. I have a question about that very first result, right under your image, and it's for your website. So it says Jason Barnard, the brand SERP guy. I'm a digital marketing. Then it kind of trails off. But like, what are they pulling that from? Your meta tags or somewhere else? Because it's 2021. I specialize in optimizing brand SERP and managing knowledge panels. Seems like what you'd want there, but where'd that come from?
Oh, right, you just said 2021, so I've messed it up. It should be 2022 already.
Well, it's only 20 days into it. Yeah.
No, but that's a miss on my part. I think I suddenly feel ashamed.
I'm sorry. You call you out.
No, it's fine. It's actually kind of that whole thing is there's so much to manage. And I think we don't realize that. Actually, I literally just got an email from Fabrice Canel, who is one of the big guns at Bing, who actually builds the robot at Bing, Microsoft Bing, that crawls the web. And he pointed out a couple of mistakes I'd made really kindly. He's a lovely, lovely guy.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I thought, of course. And the reason I hadn't done it is because there's so much to manage.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we often forget quite how much information there is about us on our site, obviously, first of all, but also on the social media platforms, but also the other platforms. And if you look at my brand SERP, you'll see Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, IMDb, maybe. All of these sites, I need to manage it. And when we switch from 2021 to 2022, that's one example. I need to update it all.
Yeah. Okay.
And that kind of brand management is really important. And to your question, I rank number one because Google understands that is my site. But you have to remember there are 250 Jason Barnards in the world. There's a footballer, there's a dentist, there's a hockey player, there's a doctor at San Francisco University. And there are 5 or 6, strangely enough, digital marketers.
Oh, wow.
Why does it show me at the top? Because it's confident. So I'm competing with all these people with the same name as me, but Google shows me not because I'm more famous necessarily than the other people. The footballer or an ice hockey player are very famous, but because it's so confident, because I've educated it so well. It's a child. I'm educating it. And it shouts out in the playground when it thinks it's understood.
Yeah, good. Okay, good illustration. So a question from Brian, is this a GMB listing? I'm assuming that means Google My Business listing?
Yeah, on my, if you search Jason Barnard, you won't see a GMB because I'm not a business.
Yeah.
If you search Kalicube, which is my company, you will. And that's kind of a whole new or different aspect is people and companies are very, very different. And that GMB idea is Google will show GMB when it has that information and it thinks that information is relevant. And that's something you need to remember for everything in a brand SERP, search engine results page for a brand or a person's name, is Google will show what it thinks is helpful and relevant to the audience.
Okay.
And so if I'm a local business, obviously, if you're in the same town as me, that's going to be terribly relevant. If you're in a different country or a different continent, that GMB is not going to be so relevant. So it's less likely to show.
Okay, cool. So we got to.
Sorry, I just realized it is getting really complicated really quickly, and I can't actually talk about this for more than 5 minutes without going, "Ooh, what about this rabbit hole? What about that one?"
Yes, I completely understand. Good question from Carrie. If I wanted to Google my business and see what other people see, do I use Incognito? Would it be different than what she'd see otherwise?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
The incognito mode helps you to see something more neutral. It's never totally neutral, so you've got to kind of always take a step back. Another point is that Google does personalize results, but when you search a term, a name, a brand, or a person, or any term, the first result you see tends not to be very personalized. If you then skip around the result, so you click on another result, you come back, you click on another result, you come back, you will see the results change each time you come back, and they will be more and more personalized to your particular activity within that search journey.
Oh,
So don't think that Google's personalizing everything from the get-go. It's personalizing as you surf because it isn't yet confident enough to be able to personalize it from the very start. So Incognito is a great way, actually, honestly, to see how much it does that as you go through a little journey. And I do that a lot. I've got a series called the Daily Brand SERP. And I do that a lot. I navigate around what I've found. And often as I navigate around, I see the results changing, evolving to try to fit what Google thinks my interest in. I'll give you a really quick example.
Okay.
If you search my name and you click on, for example, my partner, and then you come back, it's likely to show you the cartoon series that we made together.
Oh, okay.
Whereas it wouldn't when you first searched it, because it thinks they're interested in what these two people have done together. That's really subtle and really interesting.
It is. Yeah, it is. Okay, so Brian wants to go back to, all right, we're back at having Googled Jason Barnard and that top result again. That is your home page. So where is that information coming from? Is it meta tags? Is it something else?
Right, yeah, I'm sorry. That was a question you
No.
asked about 20 minutes ago, and I completely went off a tangent. 100%. Number one is the meta title is incredibly important. Google, since September, has started to rewrite them, and you will hear a lot of noise in the SEO industry that Google is rewriting them all, and it isn't the case.
Okay.
It's rewriting 10 to 20% of them.
Why?
And in the case, pardon me?
Why is it rewriting that 10 to 20%?
That's a great question. Because it thinks that it can do a better job.
Oh.
And it isn't because Google is pretentious and thinks it's much smarter than we are, which is how, I mean, I actually say it that way because I want people to think, oh, wow, isn't that pretentious? It's actually because most people, most companies do not even start to think about this. So Google's saying, we've got 90% of all the websites in the world who don't even start to think about it.
Yeah.
They are being penalized by that fact. And if we can help them, or we can help by representing this better, we want to do that because we really want to surface the best information, even if the person who owns that information isn't necessarily making the right efforts. So
kind of nice.
yeah, well, there's a kind of mismatch between, if I'm an SEO, I think, well, I've written this really great meta title. Why aren't you using it? I'm really upset. Which is fine. I understand that. It's 100% reasonable.
Valid? Yeah, sure.
But then there are 90% of the rest of the web who didn't even start to think about it. And because they aren't employing an SEO, they're at a disadvantage. So Google is looking to try to dig up the gold that you can't see on the surface. And I think that's lovely. They don't always do a great job, and that's a pity, and that's a big debate. But certainly, if you're a business owner who doesn't look after those meta titles, meta descriptions, and the basic SEO stuff, hopefully it's actually going to give you a better chance against the big guns who do. So number one is, I do advise you nonetheless, fill in that meta title because Google will use it if it is relevant. Number two, the meta description. That's the second thing. It's if you've got a WordPress site, it's in the Yoast SEO part if you're using Yoast, which I love.
Yeah.
Meta title, meta description. They call it SEO title and SEO description. And Google rewrites meta descriptions probably 40, 50, 60% of the time. So even more than they do the title.
Wow.
But once again, you still want to do it.
Okay.
Because, a 50% hit rate is still pretty good.
It is. So when they're rewriting, where are they getting their source? Like, what are they looking at? Do you have any idea?
Yep. Oh, 100%. They look in the page and they pull out what they think is relevant.
Oh, so it would
So
be something you wrote, but just not necessarily what you put in the meta. Oh,
yeah, it's something from your own site. But what it does is it looks in the page and it says, well, they've written this title and this description, but I don't think it's relevant in this particular context.
yeah.
So I'm going to show something else. And so from that perspective, it really does help you to focus on, have I got a great SEO title, meta title, SEO description, meta description? If I do, Google will probably use it.
Yeah.
If I don't, it will use something else in the page. And that makes me incredibly keen to make sure that everything in that page represents my brand positively.
Yes.
So, it's encouragement maybe to make sure that you don't leave any rubbish in your page. And we're all guilty
Of course.
of skipping over some rubbish in the page and thinking it doesn't matter. But Google might actually pull that up, in which case it does matter.
Okay, yeah, it does. I want to know, friends, if you went ahead and Googled yourself and if you saw, like, what did you see? Did you see yourself, somebody else? Did you see what you want to see? Because I want us all, like, this time next month maybe to try this again and see if it's different, see if it's better. So just so we can make this super practical for all of us, like, most of the people that are here are very small businesses. So they might have a WordPress site. I think probably everyone here does. Let me know if you don't. But knowing that, small business, limited resources, what is kind of the easiest way to influence Google to show what we wanted to show?
Right. Well, it's a great question. I mean, from a perspective, when somebody searches your brand name, what does Google do? It says, what is going to be helpful and valuable to, it's Google's user. It's your audience, but it's a subset of Google's users who are your audience. But while they're on Google, they are Google's users and not yours. So Google is saying, what can I present to this user that will help them in their relationship with the business that they've searched for? And that comes down to, once again, we come back to this title description. Make it descriptive of who you are, what you do, why you're great, and why they might want to do business with you, because the person searching your brand name knows who you are. And I've got a great example, and you're not going to believe who it is, and I'll tell you right at the end.
Okay.
It used to say something along the lines of the best in cheap electronics, bikes, and books. Now it says smile more, pay less.
Yes.
Amazon.
Yes, I saw that.
That changed 6 months ago, and it took them 20 years to understand that people searching Amazon are actually interested in their brand message and not in the stupid products they sell.
It probably made sense 20 years ago, do you think?
I think it made sense when they were starting off, because they were trying to rank for these shorthead keywords like cheap bikes, cheap electronics. I would bet my bottom dollar Amazon is, since 2008, one of the biggest companies in the world. I estimate they're 13 or 14 years too late.
Yeah.
To cotton on to that. Okay. I mean, obviously, it's easy for me to criticize. I haven't made billions of dollars, so it's a bit of a cheat. But definitely, in retrospect, you say, well, yeah, people searching Amazon the last 10 years,
we know what they sell.
Yeah. So, and that's incredibly important. It's saying somebody searching your brand name knows who you are. You need to make them comfortable with the idea of doing business with you, as opposed to trying to sell them cheap electronics or books or whatever it might be.
I love that. All right, Phoebe Moon. Phoebe Moon does quilting. I misspoke last week. You can yell at me anytime you want when I do that. But she saw her personal teacher site followed by a listing for podcasts that she was on, and then her Instagram site. That sounds like a good thing to see, right?
It is, but she could actually make it better.
Okay.
I mean, this is what I do. I look at this kind of thing and I
This
think,
is
oh,
great.
how can we make that better? Now, what Google wants to do is show what's going to be helpful and valuable to your audience. And if you search my name, it gives you basically my site, Twitter, LinkedIn, maybe Facebook, search engine land, and my company site. And that's basically a choice of how do you want to interact with this person on Twitter, on LinkedIn, through his company, through Search Engine Journal because he's a writer? Or do you want to go into his site and learn more about him as a person? And from the example we just saw, Instagram should logically be above the podcast episode because the podcast episode is not necessarily something fundamentally important to that person. So I would expect to see their site, which is great. That's a great achievement. Instagram, if you're on Instagram, maybe Twitter, if you're into Twitter. And the podcast would appear perhaps in a video box or a podcast box or as a link, and would come and go with other content that is time sensitive.
Okay.
But you would be dominating with your own site and your own social media sites.
How does she get her Instagram moved up?
That would be by linking to the Instagram account from her personal website and linking straight back from the Instagram account. Sorry, linking from her website to the Instagram and from the Instagram to the website. That shows that Google that the two are related, and it will then become more confident to push it further up. And the second thing is engagement. Obviously, likes, followers, all the user engagement you can get, because if you can demonstrate to Google that your audience are engaging with you on Instagram or Twitter, in my case, LinkedIn, it will think, well, that is actually helpful and useful. So the point is not just to engage with your audience and have your audience engage with you, but to demonstrate to Google that that's the case. And at which point you will end up dominating with these platforms that you prefer, because you have ensured that Google has seen that you're engaging with your audience and your audience is happy to engage with you, or keen even to engage with you on those platforms.
It makes so much sense. Okay, a little bit of a technical question from Carrie. She has a Shopify site and an Etsy shop. Can you influence the metadata on those?
Yeah, I actually don't know the platforms in detail, but on all of these platforms you can. I actually did a case study on a Wix site. Wix is famous for being difficult to deal with in this kind of sense. And it turns out it's really easy. You just have to find the right button to press on. It's going to be called something like SEO parameters or SEO settings. It's going to be called something SEO.
Yeah.
And they might call it a meta title. They might call it an SEO title. But that's the part you want to change in your interface. And the problem with something like Wix or Shopify or Etsy is there are so many options on the side, and they all give them different names. So it's difficult to find them. But if you take the time and you figure it out, they usually have great help guides.
Yeah.
So
Shopify
searching for change my meta title on Etsy would almost certainly bring up a result that will show you exactly where you can do that.
True. I have a Shopify store, and I think I got an app for that. There's an app for that. So Carrie, send me a message on Facebook if you want, and we can make sure that you find it. And she says she can probably Google how to do that.
Right. No, but that's the thing is we think, oh, I'll Google that. And as a business, that's another incredibly interesting and important point is my business. When somebody has a question about it, they don't go to my site and look for the answer.
Right.
They just Google it. So I need to be sure that I have answered all the questions that my audience and my users and my clients have, and that Google is able to present that as the first result when they ask Google what the answer is, so that it isn't my competitor who answers that question.
Yeah, that's where we get more into like SEO generally, right?
Well, it is SEO and it isn't, in the sense that it doesn't require SEO skills. It just means that I have to have a page that answers the question clearly.
Oh, okay.
If I have a page that answers a question clearly, when my audience searches that question on Google, Google will put me number one because I am the authority about myself.
And they're your audience, and Google knows they're your audience. How?
Well, and that's where you come back to the brand SERP. If Google's representing you accurately, and what you're seeing is what you think you should see, and you said earlier on, what do you expect to see? What do you see and what do you want to see? And if you see something that represents you in a way that you feel comfortable with, Google has probably understood who you are, what you do, and who your audience is, in which case, when somebody searches one of those specific questions about your brand and you have that answer on your site, Google will put you number one because it wants to give the authoritative answer. If it doesn't have the authoritative answer, that's when it puts your competition there.
Okay. Very good. Question from Brian. Do we still need to include the rich snippet code in things like FAQs? Oh, man.
That's a great question. Answer is, if you can do it.
Can we explain a little bit about what that is, why he might be asking?
Oh, right. It's really geeky.
Yes.
It's a piece of code called Schema Markup. And it identifies to Google what the question is and what the answer is in the FAQ example we were just presented with. And Schema Markup is code in the page that the user doesn't see. And it's in Google's native language. But you have to remember that all it does is confirm what is in the page. So Schema Markup is helpful, but it isn't necessary because Google has probably understood what's in the page and the Schema Markup simply confirms it.
Is it worth doing then?
If you can, definitely.
Okay.
And if we look at it from a perspective of confidence, Google's read your page and it says, right, I've understood what the question and the answer is, and I'm 40% confident. If you can repeat that message in Schema Markup, which is its native language, you give it the bullet list, the simple summary of what it is the page says, and it's going to be 70% confident. So you're always winning the game. So if your competition, or if you're the only person giving the answer, Schema Markup really isn't necessary. If there are multiple sites giving the potentially giving the answer, it really is a big help. So just say Google has probably understood Schema Markup is supportive evidence that really helps it to be confident it's understood, and that's a big help to ranking.
Okay, very good. I want to ask this one from Mark here. How important are brand colors and fonts across all platforms? Because as we're talking about SERPs, they might all be on the same page, right?
Yeah, I mean, fonts aren't important in a Google sense, at least, because Google has its own fonts and it shows those fonts. You don't have a choice. But the images and the brand colors are phenomenally important. I would argue that most brands forget it or ignore it and miss it. And being from a Pinterest world, I'm sure that annoys you a great deal. I had the experience 2 years ago. I looked at the results for my brand search and the images, I had these images on the page and I thought, it doesn't make any sense. It looks awful.
It was just too random, you mean?
Yeah, just random. It didn't make sense. And there weren't very many delightful colors. Now, what I then did was, my ex-wife is a graphic designer. She's really smart. She's got great talent for that. And I said, can we do a set of templates and a set of colors and basically make it so that any idiot can mix this stuff together, including me, obviously. And she did that. And within 6 weeks, all of a sudden we had a range of colors that all fitted together and a design that made sense. And when you searched the brand name Kalicube, and if you do it now, you'll see it's totally visually consistent and the colors all match.
Oh, yeah.
And that's my action. It's not Google making the decision. It's me educating, once again, Google, what are my colors and what is my design, whatever you would call it, Bible.
Right. And for your personal, I would say you have chosen red. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Very good. Very consistent.
The red thing is delightful because people say, "Oh, you must love red." I actually don't like red at all.
What did you do to yourself? Why did you do this?
Well, if the story is actually, I'm a musician. I'm a double bass player,
Yeah,
and I
cool.
was playing on stage, and in the first half of the gig, I was wearing the red shirt,
Mm-hmm.
and in the second half of the gig, I was wearing a blue shirt.
Oh,
And somebody videoed it, and I looked at the video, and I thought, I look exciting and delightful and dynamic in the first
yeah.
half. In the second half, I just blend into the background.
Oh, interesting.
And that was the day I thought, well, if you're going to be on stage or in public, red's good, and it works for me. So now I wear red simply because of that one gig where I thought,
You have no idea
wow,
how fateful that moment would be, huh?
it's kind of weird, isn't it, how that can change your life. So now I have this terrible situation where before any Zoom meeting or going out, I think, is this professional? If it's professional, I put the red on, and if it's not, I wear a boring old grey t-shirt, which is
All
rubbish.
right. All right. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. I mean, our friend Jeff C with the beard, like, I'm sorry, but he can never shave that because everyone
No,
knows the beard, which may be more of a commitment than red shirts, even.
I think yes,
Yes,
definitely.
maybe. I want to bring up this point from Holly Winchester. She says she owned a flower shop called Dean's Flowers. Other flower shops used her name as a keyword in her ads, so the shopper was led away from my site to theirs. Ouch.
That's really annoying. I
Yeah.
empathize.
Completely legal, right? I mean, there's nothing shady about that. Google's not going to take it down.
No, well, there's two things. One of which is in Google Ads, anybody can bid on your brand name.
Mm.
You can't stop them bidding on your brand name, which is kind of legally, I'm not a lawyer, but fair enough. But they cannot use a trademarked name in their ad copy.
Mm.
So if your brand name, if your company name is trademarked within the region that the ad is appearing, you can actually apply to Google, but you have to apply
Okay.
and say, I do not allow my competitors use my brand name or my trademark name in the ad. So there are two things, one of which is it needs to be trademarked in the territory you're talking about. Number two is you need to actually actively apply for it, and they will stop it.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay, let's dig into now more what we can do. Okay, we talked about what we can do on our blog, right? So meta description and title, super important. What else can we do? We talked about Instagram. We can have that appear by linking back and forth and by getting our engagement up on the platform. What are some other things that, like, some people who only have time to do 4 or 5 things maybe should do?
Right. I mean, we've covered the really important stuff. For your local business, Google My Business is incredibly important. You need to be sure that you fill out all that information. You need to look after your homepage. You need to look after, I mean, Google puts what we call rich site links just under the homepage. It's the blue links that link into parts of your site. And all that requires is that your site is well organized, logical, and that it is clear what role each page plays for your user, your audience. So one typical example is the login page for a site. People just have login and then the 2 fields to log in.
Yeah.
Add a little bit of text just to say, this is where you log in. Welcome to our great, wonderful site, whatever it might be, because Google needs a little bit of text to get the context of what that page does, what role it plays. Same thing for contact us, same thing for about us, make a very clear about us page. Google loves those for the rich site links. And as soon as you get those rich site links, you're going to get the top 25% of the entire SERP is under your control. And if you don't have them, it's the top 7 or 8%. So the difference is absolutely immense. And I talked about Wix earlier on, and the case study, that was the case study. It was saying, how long does it take us to trigger those, to get those rich site links, to make us more attractive, give that great user experience where they can click straight through to the About Us, the Contact Us, the login page? The answer is 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, that's not bad.
Really quick, really easy. You just have to apply logical, helpful techniques, and it's letting Google know what role that page plays and making sure that page is in a site structure that makes sense. The next thing, sorry.
Wait, I'm sorry, but can you explain a site structure that makes sense? What would make sense? What would not?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that's good. I always think this is so obvious, and it obviously isn't.
It
Sorry.
is to you. No problem.
If you've got a blog, your blog should be mysite.com/blog/ and then you've got all the categories with the articles.
Okay.
And then mysite.com/about, with about my company, then about me, then about the other members of staff. And /about/contact would go in there as well.
Okay.
Then if you've got products and categories, you would have mysite.com/category/product. So basically it's about having folders. The slash name /blog/category is a folder, and you need to make sure that the content within each folder lives together logically.
Okay.
That's how Google will understand. So you would obviously have for the login page, mysite.com/clients/login. That makes sense. Makes sense to us as human beings. It makes sense to Google, and it helps Google to understand that this is the client section, this is the blog section, this is the product section, and this is the blog section. And then it can show those rich site links really easily. And it literally takes 4 weeks.
Wow. Okay. I used to do website design way back in the day when we'd have to like hook up with FTP, and I used Dreamweaver a long time ago. So I can see how I could have set up my site structure that way. Like you have the folder, you drop it in the right folder. You have the subfolder, you drop it in the right subfolder. How does that work with something like WordPress?
Well, with WordPress, you've got posts and pages. And with posts, you would divide it into categories.
Yeah.
So your blogs would be in categories, potentially your products. If you've got WooCommerce, it would be categories with posts underneath it. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
But then your pages would be an About page and then an About Us page. And the About Us page would have the parent being the About page. So you need to go into the right-hand menu and choose Parent Page so that it becomes a child, a subcategory of the About page. So with posts, you organize by category, and with pages, you think about page, parent page, child page, whatever it might be. And it's really simple. It's astonishing.
It's simple, but I had no idea why that was there. Probably maybe everybody else did, but I had no idea. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's a couple of things. It's number one, organizing in your own brain. And what you'll realize is when you look at your site, you're saying, well, actually, is it organized correctly? And you will think, oh, it's incredibly logical. And then you look at it and you ask somebody else, your mother, your father, your sister, your uncle, whoever it might be, does this make sense? And they would probably say, well, no, it doesn't. And you just need to take that step back and say, my logic isn't the same as everyone else's logic. What I need to do is find a logic that makes sense to the vast majority of people. And the vast majority of people are going to be looking at a blog site. We call them silos. It's my blog is in this folder, my products are in this folder, the About Me is in this folder, and the client section is in this folder. And that's the /client/ that's the idea of a folder. And I think an enormous number of companies and small businesses and big businesses miss that. And if you're a small business and you think, oh, I'm stupid or whatever, 60% of companies have these rich site links and 40% don't. So that's a big, big, big chunk of the world who don't. And the number of big brands who don't have them is massive. They're just as bad as the rest of us.
That's good to know, right?
Coca-Cola don't. Coca-Cola are rubbish at their brand SERP. It's astonishing. Search for Coca-Cola now and you'll look at it going, that isn't an international corporation. Obviously it is, but it doesn't look like it when you search their name if you didn't know who they were. Sorry, Coca-Cola, for dissing you if they'd watched.
No, not at all. I was just thinking that between the color of your shirt and what you know, they should be working with you.
Oh, that's a very good point. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, and sorry, just to finish the question, in fact, I was going through, I've given the basic steps, but one of the things that local businesses in particular need to pay great attention to is reviews.
Oh. Okay.
Because what will happen, especially with local results, is reviews will tend to rank, review sites will tend to rank. And the problem, or the good thing, depending on how you look at it, is that if you have Trustpilot or Yelp or even an industry-specific review site ranking on the left-hand side on desktop, it will often appear on the right-hand side in your Google My Business.
Oh.
So it gets double visibility.
Hmm.
So you really have to pay attention to that. And if you think, well, let's say Yelp is ranking, but I hate Yelp, that's fine. Lots of people hate Yelp. The fact that it's ranking means that Google thinks it's useful, helpful, and valuable to your audience. So you have to deal with it. You
there's
can't
nothing you
just
can do
ignore
about
it.
Okay. So you just suggest get more good reviews? Because it's going to
Not
show
easy.
up? Okay. Okay.
Well, actually, there are two techniques, and I'm going to be kinder than you just were. Sorry to insult you, but if you have two choices. You can deal with it by getting more great reviews on Yelp if you think that isn't something that's reasonable or possible, or you think that Yelp are a twisted system that you're never going to win, which
Yeah.
some people do.
Okay.
You can look below that and find another review site that you think represents your brand better, push reviews onto that site, and prove to Google that Yelp isn't the best representation, that this other site is. That will gradually move up and Yelp will move down. So, sorry, I didn't mean to insult you, Alisa, but
No, it's fine. It's
but
good.
but rather than suffer the consequences of Yelpdom, whatever that might be called, you can actually say, well, I'm going to focus on something else. And it's up to me to educate, once again, Google, that this other site is more representative and more helpful for my audience than Yelp was.
Okay. Very good. Brian has a question. Aren't Google reviews king? You'd think they would be on Google, right?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously with Google My Business, that's always going to show up there. So you definitely have to deal with Google. And that's the one exception where I say you actually can't suggest something else. You have to deal with it, which is unfortunate. So, but further down on that Google My Business, now called the Google Business Profile, they will show reviews from around the web. And the reviews from around the web are going to be taken from those that rank in the normal results. Okay. So if you have something that you don't like, Yelp, well, I'm going to come back to that again. If it's in your Google Business Profile reviews from around the web, if you can push it down onto page 2, it will disappear from your Google Business Profile.
Okay, very good. Okay, I stopped you because I can't remember why.
Because I've been talking too much, almost certainly.
No, I don't think so. I'm looking at all these questions that we have, and we haven't gotten to a lot of them. But I think what we have done is talked about how regular people can teach Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the key. So,
and I think kind of that is the key, and it actually doesn't go enormously much further than that. Is if you start to think, I'm not looking at this massive machine that's frightening and difficult and runs the world. I'm looking at a child that I need to educate. And I need to educate it about who I am, what I do, and who my audience is, and what's important to that audience. And if I can successfully educate this child who only wants to understand, in terms of brand SERPs at least, it wants to understand how to represent you to your audience when they search your brand name. All you need to do is demonstrate to it what your brand represents. And if you're honest and your brand represents something, you're communicating to Google a meaningful and honest representation of your brand, it will show what you want because it doesn't have any judgment on you in particular.
So if I don't like what I see, I can't say Google hates me, right? It has no feelings.
No, exactly. It's an algorithm. It is reflecting what it understands the world thinks about you.
Okay.
So if it's reflecting something you don't like, then either the world doesn't think very much of you, or it's misunderstood. And
Okay.
if it's reflecting something that is true, i.e. the world doesn't like you, you need to figure out how to sort that out, which is business. The foundation of your business has a problem. And if it's misunderstood, you just need to explain it better.
Okay. Excellent. Well, we're getting to the end of our time. If you want to learn more about Jason, the brand SERPguy.com will be the place to go. All right. If nobody else has a question, I'm going to ask, aside from ignoring this, how, like, I don't want to mess anything up. So is it possible to mess this up? What should I be careful of?
Right, it is possible to mess it up. I mean, the trick is to look at what you're saying on your own website, make that clear, make it representative of who you are and what you do and what you stand for and what your audience is expecting. And then replicate that across all the social channels, all the review sites, all the profiles that might be out there, all the articles that are written about you, and make sure that your audience reflects that same message when they're posting on forums or review sites or wherever it might be. That is the really simple approach to making this work. The thing that you can do wrong is to think that you can trick Google.
Yeah.
So you might think, oh, I'll post a fake article and Google's going to believe it and rank it number 1 or number 2, whatever. And the truth is, Google only has a limited number of places on that brand SERP, 10, let's say. So if you create this fake article, number 1, does Google have the space to put it? Number 2, is it truly relevant and helpful to your audience?
Hmm.
And number 3, is Google going to spot that you actually wrote it yourself? And the answer to that third one is almost certainly yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this idea of saying I can create this fake news around myself that makes me look great is potentially something that could win in the short term, but it isn't going to win long term. The long term is very much repetitive confirmation to this child that you serve your audience or your customers for what they're looking for in terms of a solution.
That makes sense.
Accurately, helpfully, convincingly, and that they keep coming back for more. And that repeat visit idea, and the number of times that people will search your brand name, and the number of times with a bricks and mortar store that they come back to your shop physically is phenomenally important. And what it comes down to, and I think kind of that's a really nice conclusion, is it's actually just being great business. We're back to the 90s where you just got to be a good business person. And then the question is, can I communicate to Google? Can I educate Google about what I do and the fact that I do serve my audience incredibly well?
Okay. So are all of your social bios, the short ones, are they all identical or just similar?
Very similar.
Very.
The thing about identical is, like a child, if you repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, the child would understand. So that's the ideal. But the reality of life is that your audience on Twitter, your audience on Facebook, your audience on TikTok expect a slightly different or would react favorably to a slightly different presentation of yourself. So it's a question of saying, I need to adapt to the audience because the audience remains key, but I need to make sure that it's consistent and that the message isn't vastly different and that the general approach that I have is consistent across all these different platforms. So don't repeat yourself to try to please Google. Make sure that you make that repetition within the context and the phrasing and the vocabulary of the audience of the platform you're aiming at.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Jason. This is really, really interesting. I learned a lot. And I saw Brian in the comments is like, that's the hour. Yeah, it went by very, very fast. Again, if you want to learn more about Jason, the brand SERP guy, and his book, The Fundamentals of Brand Search for Business. Very nice. Yes, you can get your Kindle version now for $2.99, right?
Yeah, 100%.
A
And the reason
bargain.
I'm holding up this rather natty piece of paper is that the paperback isn't ready yet. I'll be getting that on Sunday.
Oh, that's
We
exciting.
released it this week. We're trying to get on the bestseller list. We've got this whole kind of mad plan going. And the
Yay.
more we can sell in the next few days on Kindle, we get into a bestseller list. We were on the same page as we were on page 1 of marketing books.
I would expect nothing less from you.
Exactly. And so it's an experiment. And next week we'll have the paperback, and the real life will then start.
Fantastic.
And I would tend to prefer the paperback myself to the Kindle version. So,
Can write it. Yeah. Yeah. I like that too.
well,
Okay.
the books in the background here obviously demonstrate that physical books are pretty cool.
They are pretty cool. All right. Just like you are pretty cool. You gave us tons of
you.
information. Thank you so very much. And we'll see the rest of you next week. Bye.
Brilliant. Thank you. And sorry I was late.
No worries.